Carl Jung believed that the most important parts of us are often hidden, not in what we show to the world, but in what is missing from it. We expect presence to define our lives, the voices we hear, the hands we hold, the eyes that meet ours. But then, someone is gone, and somehow their absence speaks louder than they ever did while standing next to us. It's not their words you remember. It's the way the silence rearranges you. It's how their empty chair becomes a teacher, how the space they once filled begins to reveal truths you couldn't see before. Absence isn't a void. It's a message. It's the universe pointing to something in you that was always there, but only visible when nothing is in its place. You start noticing the subtle changes, how you carry yourself differently, how you see the world with new eyes, how your heart learns to beat without leaning on someone else's rhythm. Jung taught that symbols, dreams, and deep emotions are bridges to the unconscious. But loss is a doorway. And when someone leaves, you are pushed through it, into a deeper, more unfiltered version of yourself. Some absences are not the end. They are the beginning of who you were always meant to be. When someone leaves, it's not always the sharp pain of the moment that changes you. It's what happens in the quiet days afterward, when the noise fades, and all that's left is space. That space has weight. It's heavy, almost physical, like the air itself has thickened. You walk into the same room, see the same objects, and yet everything feels altered. You don't know whether the world has changed or you have, but you can feel the shift in your bones. Carl Jung once suggested that life has a way of pulling us toward what we need to grow, even if it doesn't align with what we want. Sometimes that pull comes as a loss, not a punishment, but a kind of sacred rearranging, the removal of a presence so you can finally meet parts of yourself that only reveal themselves in solitude. It's strange. When they were there, you probably didn't think about how much of your life bent around them. Your routines, your moods, even your way of seeing the world, subtly shaped by their orbit. But now, without them, you begin to see the outlines of where they once fit. Like a picture frame with nothing inside, it still hints at what was once there, but it also asks a question. Who are you without it? Absence does something that presence never could. It strips away the distractions. When someone is beside you, your energy naturally flows outward, toward them, their reactions, their expectations. When they're gone, that energy has nowhere to go but inward. It's uncomfortable at first, even unbearable. But in that discomfort, something ancient stirs. Jung believed that the unconscious speaks in symbols and subtle patterns, not in loud declarations. And what is absence, if not the most silent symbol of all? It forces you to confront the parts of your identity that were hidden under the comfort or the chaos of having them there. At first, you might try to fill the space with noise, with distractions, with people who feel like temporary replacements. But eventually, you realize that the space itself is the teacher. It's not meant to be filled, it's meant to be felt. This is the moment where most people turn away. They run from the silence because it feels like loss. But if you stay, if you sit with it long enough, you start to hear something else. The silence begins to take shape. It reveals the places where you depended on someone else for validation, for purpose, for stability. It shows you the wounds you didn't know you had, and the strengths you never noticed. It doesn't do this all at once. It's slow, almost imperceptible, Like watching a seed sprout beneath the soil, you don't realize it's growing until one day. It's undeniable. Some absences are not here to haunt you. They are here to prepare you, to strip you down to what's essential so that, when life builds you back up, you are built on something real. And here's the part most people miss. When you finally understand the lesson of absence, you stop resenting it. You stop seeing it as a thief and start seeing it as a guide. It was never here to take something away from you. It was here to give you back to yourself. So, if you're in that space right now, if you're carrying the ache of someone no longer beside you, know this. Their absence may be speaking, not in anger, not in judgment, but in a language you've never heard before. And if you listen closely enough, it might just change everything. The thing about absence is, it doesn't just leave you empty, it rearranges you, quietly, like water wearing down stone. At first, you resist it. You try to force life back into the shape it had before. You reach for the same routines, the same thoughts, the same comfort. But they no longer fit. You've been shifted, even if you don't yet understand how. Carl Jung believed that every experience, no matter how painful, holds within it a fragment of the self we have yet to claim. Loss is no exception. When someone's presence leaves your life, the parts of yourself that were leaning on them have to stand alone for the first time. It feels unstable, shaky, like learning how to walk again after years of leaning on a crutch. Absence becomes a mirror, not the kind that reflects your face, but the kind that reflects your core. It shows you not just who you are without them, but who you were all along, hidden beneath the layers of what you shared with them. You begin to notice things about yourself, the way you move through the day when no one is watching, the thoughts you never voiced because they might not be understood, the dreams you set aside because they didn't align with the life you were living together. These things rise up now, almost uninvited. It's as if the silence has made space for them to speak. And though at first their voices are faint, over time they grow louder than the ache. Jung spoke often of individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are, beyond the masks and roles you've worn for survival. Absence, for all its sting, accelerates that process. It forces you to examine where you've been living by habit instead of intention, where you've been shaped more by another person's needs than your own calling. Here's the paradox. When someone is in your life, they are part of your inner world. But when they leave, they become a part of your inner self. Their memory, their influence, their impact, it all moves inward. And in that inward movement, you begin to digest it, to integrate it. Some of their qualities might become your own. Not because you're trying to hold on to them, but because they awakened something in you that was already there. Maybe they taught you patience, and now you carry it naturally. Maybe they showed you courage, and now you face life with a quiet bravery you didn't have before. In this way, absence doesn't erase, it transforms. You don't lose them entirely. You carry the distilled essence of what they brought into your life. It becomes part of your character, your choices, your way of seeing the world. But there's another layer here, one Jung would not ignore. Sometimes absence reveals the shadow, the parts of yourself you didn't want to see while they were here, the dependency, the fear of being alone, the belief that your worth was tied to being chosen or loved by them. Facing that shadow is uncomfortable, but it's also where the real transformation begins. Because when you can sit with it, acknowledge it, and still stand, you discover a strength you didn't know you had. A strength that doesn't depend on anyone staying. Absence stops being a wound. It becomes a forge. It shapes you in the fire of solitude until you emerge not untouched by pain, but redefined by it. And that is how absence, though silent, can become the loudest force in your evolution. It speaks in the way you now carry yourself, in the boundaries you set, in the choices you make from a place of authenticity, not fear. Some people will see the change and think it's subtle. Others will feel it instantly. But you will know, deep in your bones, that you are not the same, because you were not meant to be. Something subtle happens after a great absence reshapes you. The world itself starts to look different. Not because the streets have changed or the seasons have shifted, but because you are no longer the same observer. Carl Jung often spoke of perception as a mirror of the soul. What you notice, what draws your attention, what you find meaning in, all of it reflects the state of your inner world. When someone leaves, the lens through which you see life is altered, permanently. The colors might feel muted at first. Music might feel hollow. Even laughter might sound like it belongs to another universe, one you can no longer reach. This is the period where absence feels like a shadow that follows you everywhere, softening every edge of joy. But then, without warning, something shifts. You notice a detail you've walked past 1,000 times, the way light filters through the same window you've always had, the way the wind brushes against your skin on an ordinary afternoon, the quiet rhythm of your own breathing when the world is still. These moments don't erase the loss, but they start to fill the empty spaces with a different kind of awareness. Jung might say, you've begun the process of reintegration, allowing the outer world to connect with the newly shaped inner one. Absence has a way of slowing you down. When you're no longer distracted by the constant exchange of someone else's presence, their words, their energy, their needs, you begin to experience life with a rawness you might have avoided before. It's not always pleasant. Sometimes the rawness feels like exposure, as if you're standing in the cold, without a coat. But over time, you adapt. You learn that you can survive the chill. And in that survival, the world's subtleties become more visible. You might find yourself drawn to different places, different people, different ideas, not out of escape, but because your compass has shifted. What once pulled you forward might no longer matter. What once felt unimportant might now feel essential. Carl Jung believed that meaning often reveals itself through symbols, and after loss, the world begins speaking to you in them. You might see a bird take flight at the exact moment you let go of a painful thought. You might find a passage in a book that feels as though it was written just for you. You might overhear a stranger's words and feel as if they were an answer to a question you hadn't dared to ask aloud. These moments are not coincidences. They are the psyche's way of showing you that your outer and inner worlds are always in conversation. Loss sharpens your sensitivity to this dialogue. And here's something important. When someone you've loved is no longer by your side, it doesn't mean their influence disappears. It often reappears in the way you interpret the world. You might hear their voice in your head when making a decision. You might see beauty through their eyes, even years later. Their perspective becomes part of the filter you now use to engage with reality. In this way, absence doesn't just change you, it changes how you participate in life itself. You might become more compassionate because you know the quiet ache others carry. You might become more patient because you understand the slow pace of healing. Or you might become more courageous because you've already survived what you thought you couldn't. The world is the same, and yet it isn't. Because the one looking at it, you, has been irrevocably altered. Loss taught you to pay attention to what matters, even if it never announces itself loudly. It taught you to look for meaning, even in the smallest, most ordinary corners of life. And perhaps, most of all, it taught you that while people may leave, the imprint they leave on your vision never fades. When someone's presence once filled your days, their absence doesn't just leave a void, it rewires the way you connect with others. Carl Jung often emphasized that our relationships are not accidents. They are mirrors, showing us parts of ourselves we wouldn't otherwise see. And when one of those mirrors disappears, you don't just lose them. You lose the familiar reflection they gave you. At first, this can make new connections feel strange, even disorienting. You might find yourself holding back, speaking less, or being more cautious with your trust, not because you no longer care, but because you've learned the weight of what it means to invest your soul into another person. You now know the cost of being seen deeply, and the ache of being unseen again. In the early stages, this guardedness can feel like protection. You create invisible boundaries around your heart, telling yourself you'll open them when the right person comes along. But here's what Jung would remind us. The walls we build to keep out pain also keep out life. Healing, then, becomes the slow dismantling of these walls, brick by brick. Interestingly, absence doesn't just teach you about loss, it teaches you about depth. You may find yourself unable to tolerate shallow conversations or surface-level bonds. You crave connection that carries weight, that speaks to something beyond the daily script of "How's your day?" and "What's new?" You've walked through the landscape of silence, and you know how much meaning can live there. This is why, after a great loss, some people seem quieter, but somehow more intense. Their words carry more thought. Their gaze lingers a little longer. Their laughter, when it comes, feels richer, not because they're forcing joy, but because they've learned to value moments that might never return. Jung believed that we are drawn to others based on the unfinished parts of our own psyche. If that's true, then losing someone forces a recalibration. You start noticing different qualities in people, not always the ones that dazzle, but the ones that endure. The person who listens without rushing you, the one who doesn't turn away from your pauses, the one who understands that love isn't about filling silence, but being able to sit in it together. And here's the paradox. While loss can make you wary, it can also make you braver. You've already endured the heartbreak of absence, so what's left to fear? You may take chances you wouldn't have before, not because you expect them to last forever, but because you know the value of the present moment. Carl Jung might say this is the soul's way of integrating the lesson. Life is not about clinging, it's about participating fully, even when the ending is inevitable. Over time, the way you love changes shape. You no longer love to possess or to prove something. You love as a way of honoring what is real right now. You understand that people are not here to complete you. They are here to awaken parts of you. and sometimes they are here only for a season. This kind of love is quieter, but it's also stronger. It's not desperate for reassurance, because it doesn't mistake permanence for depth. It knows that even a short connection can leave a lasting mark on the soul. Absence has taught you that love doesn't need to be eternal to be meaningful. It just needs to be true while it exists. And so you begin to offer your presence without demanding promises in return. You don't hold people tighter out of fear of losing them. You hold them gently, knowing they might go, and loving them anyway. Because that, you've learned, is the only love that leaves both people free. When someone leaves your life, they don't just walk away from your days, they walk straight into your inner world. You start carrying them, not in photographs or saved messages, but in the corners of your mind where silence feels heavier than words. Carl Jung often said that, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens." Loss is the event that forces you inward. It is the moment the outer story collapses, and you have no choice but to step into the inner one. At first, the space they leave feels like a wound. It bleeds into your mornings, drips into your nights, and colors everything in between. You try to distract yourself, new places, new faces, new routines, but the mind has its own agenda. It keeps circling back, not because you want the pain, but because something inside you knows there is meaning here you haven't yet uncovered. This is the unconscious at work. Jung believed it calls you back to your pain not to punish you, but to guide you. It knows there is gold hidden in the ashes, but you must be willing to sift through them. Over time, you start noticing things you had ignored before. Patterns, triggers, beliefs about love and worth that you never questioned until now. Maybe you realize you've always been drawn to people who leave because somewhere deep inside, you've believed you were destined to be left. Or perhaps you see how much of yourself you've been giving away to be loved, leaving little left for you. These realizations can sting, but they also open the door to something greater: choice. Once you see a pattern, you can decide whether to keep it or break it. This is where the real transformation begins. You start spending more time with yourself, not in the rushed, half-present way you did before, but with a curiosity that feels almost sacred. You take walks without headphones. You write down thoughts without editing them. You notice the way your mind tries to escape certain feelings, and you gently bring it back. The absence that once felt unbearable begins to feel like a teacher. You realize that you are no longer running from loneliness. You are learning to inhabit it. And in that stillness, something unexpected happens. You meet parts of yourself you didn't know existed. The child who still longs to be held. The artist who wants to create without needing approval. The thinker who asks questions others might find unsettling. Jung would call this individuation, the process of becoming whole by integrating every part of yourself, even the ones you've buried. Loss accelerates this process because it strips away the distractions that kept you from looking inward. At first, meeting yourself like this can feel strange, even uncomfortable. You might realize you've been a stranger in your own life, always focused on the roles you play for others. But slowly, you start to enjoy your own company. You see that you are not just the sum of your relationships. You are a universe in motion, capable of sustaining your own light. This doesn't mean you stop loving or needing others. It means you no longer depend on them to fill the spaces you now know how to fill yourself. It means you can enter relationships not from a place of lack, but from a place of fullness. By the time you've walked this path for a while, the pain of absence softens into something else: gratitude, not for the loss itself, but for what it revealed. It showed you that every ending is also an unveiling, and that the greatest relationship you will ever have is the one you build with your own soul. And so, you carry them differently now, not as the person you needed them to be, but as the catalyst that brought you home to yourself. When you begin to meet yourself in the quiet, something subtle but profound happens. The world doesn't look the same anymore. It's not that the streets have changed or the seasons have shifted. It's that your eyes, the lens through which you see everything, have been cleaned of the fog that once blurred them. Carl Jung believed that we do not see things as they are, we see them as we are. And now, as you change, the world reflects that change back to you. Where you once saw only absence, you begin to see space. Space to breathe, space to grow, space to create. The people around you, too, appear different. You start noticing the quiet suffering they carry in their posture, in the way their eyes dart away when a topic gets too close to the truth. You see the masks they wear, not with judgment, but with compassion, because you recognize the weight of wearing one yourself. You no longer crave noise for the sake of noise. Small talk begins to feel like fast food, filling for a moment but leaving you empty soon after. Instead, you crave the conversations that move something in you, the kind that feel like opening a window in a room you didn't know was suffocating you. This shift is not about becoming detached from the world. It's about becoming more present in it. You're no longer living in autopilot, reacting from old wounds. You respond instead from a deeper place, a place that has learned to pause, to listen, to understand before acting. This is what Jung called bringing the unconscious into consciousness. Before, your life may have been shaped by invisible forces, fears, desires, and wounds you couldn't name. Now, as these forces rise into awareness, you begin to choose differently. Where once you might have chased after someone who pulled away, you now let them go. Not from bitterness, but from respect for both your paths. Where once you might have avoided solitude, you now seek it, knowing it's the soil in which your roots grow deeper. The strange thing is, the more comfortable you become in your own company, the more connected you feel to everything. You notice the sound of leaves in the wind. You pause to watch light filter through a window. You hear the unspoken meanings in a friend's voice. The world is no longer just a backdrop for your personal story. It's alive, and you are part of its breathing. You also begin to see loss differently. It's not that it stops hurting. Pain still comes, because you are human. But it no longer feels like a collapse. It feels like a transition, an opening into another layer of life's complexity. This doesn't make you immune to grief, but it does make you more intimate with it. You no longer resist it as an enemy. You sit with it as an old companion who has something to teach. And because you've learned to walk through absence without losing yourself, you carry a kind of quiet authority now. Not the loud, performative kind, but the kind that comes from knowing you've been broken before and built yourself back without bitterness. Others sense this in you. They may not be able to name it, but they feel it, the steadiness, the calm that isn't shaken by the surface-level storms. You become a reminder, simply by existing, that it's possible to live without clinging, to love without owning, to lose without being lost. In Jung's words, you have begun to individuate, to become who you truly are, apart from the scripts and expectations you inherited. And once you taste this way of seeing and being, there's no going back. The world is still imperfect. People still leave. But you walk through it all with new eyes, and those eyes no longer beg for someone else to give them meaning. They already see it everywhere. When you begin to meet yourself in the quiet, something subtle but profound happens. The world doesn't look the same anymore. It's not that the streets have changed or the seasons have shifted. It's that your eyes, the lens through which you see everything, have been cleaned of the fog that once blurred them. Carl Jung believed that we do not see things as they are, we see them as we are. And now, as you change, the world reflects that change back to you. Where you once saw only absence, you begin to see space. Space to breathe, space to grow, space to create. The people around you, too, appear different. You start noticing the quiet suffering they carry in their posture, in the way their eyes dart away when a topic gets too close to the truth. You see the masks they wear, not with judgment, but with compassion, because you recognize the weight of wearing one yourself. You no longer crave noise for the sake of noise. Small talk begins to feel like fast food, filling for a moment, but leaving you empty soon after. Instead, you crave the conversations that move something in you, the kind that feel like opening a window in a room you didn't know was suffocating you. This shift is not about becoming detached from the world. It's about becoming more present in it. You're no longer living in autopilot, reacting from old wounds. You respond instead from a deeper place, a place that has learned to pause, to listen, to understand before acting. This is what Jung called bringing the unconscious into consciousness. Before, your life may have been shaped by invisible forces, fears, desires, and wounds you couldn't name. Now, as these forces rise into awareness, you begin to choose differently. Where once you might have chased after someone who pulled away, you now let them go. Not from bitterness, but from respect for both your paths. Where once you might have avoided solitude, you now seek it, knowing it's the soil in which your roots grow deeper. The strange thing is, the more comfortable you become in your own company, the more connected you feel to everything. You notice the sound of leaves in the wind. You pause to watch light filter through a window. You hear the unspoken meanings in a friend's voice. The world is no longer just a backdrop for your personal story. It's alive, and you are part of its breathing. You also begin to see loss differently. It's not that it stops hurting. Pain still comes because you are human. But it no longer feels like a collapse. It feels like a transition, an opening into another layer of life's complexity. This doesn't make you immune to grief, but it does make you more intimate with it. You no longer resist it as an enemy. You sit with it as an old companion who has something to teach. And because you've learned to walk through absence without losing yourself, you carry a kind of quiet authority now. Not the loud, performative kind, but the kind that comes from knowing you've been broken before and built yourself back without bitterness. Others sense this in you. They may not be able to name it, but they feel it, the steadiness, the calm that isn't shaken by the surface-level storms. You become a reminder, simply by existing, that it's possible to live without clinging, to love without owning, to lose without being lost. In Jung's words, you have begun to individuate, to become who you truly are, apart from the scripts and expectations you inherited. And once you taste this way of seeing and being, there's no going back. The world is still imperfect. People still leave. But you walk through it all with new eyes, and those eyes no longer beg for someone else to give them meaning. They already see it everywhere. If you want, I can make Part 7 take this deeper, showing how this transformed vision influences the way you love and connect in the future, tying it emotionally to the audience's own experiences. Do you want me to move to that next? When you've seen the truth of yourself, love stops being about possession. It stops being about how much someone gives you and starts being about how deeply you can meet them without fear. Carl Jung often spoke about the union of opposites, the way true connection happens when two whole beings meet, rather than two halves looking to complete each other. And once you've walked the path of becoming whole in your own silence, you no longer approach love as a desperate search. You approach it as a gift, something beautiful when it arrives, but not something you need to grasp until your knuckles bleed. Before, love might have felt like oxygen, necessary for survival, impossible to live without. But now, it feels like music. You can hear it, move with it, let it wash through you. And even when the song ends, you still carry its melody inside you. This changes everything. You no longer chase those who can't meet you. You no longer shrink yourself to fit inside someone else's comfort zone. You no longer stay in spaces where your soul feels starved. Instead, you stand in your own center and invite others to meet you there, not as a demand, but as a quiet truth. This is who I am. This is where I am. If they join you, you walk together. If they leave, you bless them on their way. And here's the paradox. When you stop clinging, love becomes even deeper, because it's no longer tangled in fear. Fear says, I must keep you, or I will lose myself. Love says, I can let you go and still remain whole. This isn't detachment in the cold sense. It's the warmth of someone who knows love isn't destroyed by distance or absence. It's transformed by it. You begin to see relationships as living entities, not cages to trap each other in, but gardens you both choose to tend. If one person stops tending, the garden will change, and that's okay. Some flowers bloom for a season, some for a lifetime. But you stop resenting the seasons, and when you meet someone who speaks to your soul, you meet them fully, without the shadow of what came before controlling the moment. You no longer punish the present for the mistakes of the past. You no longer compare this face to that memory. You allow each connection to be what it is, not what you think it should be. This is the kind of love that doesn't demand constant proof. It doesn't need to be performed for the world to see. It's lived in small, sacred gestures. The way you listen without interrupting. The way you share silence without discomfort. The way you let another person be entirely themselves without trying to mold them. In this way, love becomes a practice in freedom. Not the freedom to escape, but the freedom to be. You also begin to realize that love doesn't only belong to romance. It exists in friendship, in family, in the way you speak to a stranger, in the way you care for the world around you. The more you embody this, the more you see. You're never actually separate from love. It's not something that arrives. It's something you are. And so, the fear of losing it fades, because how can you lose what you've become? This shift is not just healing, it's liberating. It means that even if someone important leaves tomorrow, you will not collapse. You will feel the ache, yes, but beneath it will be the steady ground you've built inside yourself. And that is the foundation from which the most beautiful connections grow. In the quiet after everything, you start to see the shape of the road you've walked. It wasn't straight, it wasn't smooth. It curved and broke and looped in ways you couldn't understand at the time. But now, when you look back, you realize every detour, every loss, every ending was part of a design. Not a perfect design in the way we imagine fate, but a living one. One that taught you not by handing you answers, but by making you live the questions. Carl Jung said that the greatest privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But becoming is rarely gentle. It happens in fire, and in silence, in heartbreak, and in still moments where no one is watching. The people who left, the ones you thought were mistakes, were never mistakes at all. They were maps. Maps that led you to places inside yourself you wouldn't have found otherwise. Some took you into valleys of grief, others into mountains of strength. But all of them pointed you inward. You begin to understand that life isn't a straight climb toward happiness. It's a weaving of light and shadow, of gain and loss, of holding and letting go. And the more you resist the shadow, the longer it follows you. The moment you turn to face it, you see it for what it is, not an enemy, but a guide. Every person who walked away left something behind. Not an empty space, a seed. Sometimes it sprouted quickly. Other times it took years beneath the soil before breaking the surface. But each one changed the landscape of who you are. And so you stop wishing the past had been different. Because if it had been, you would be different. And you wouldn't trade the person you've become for the comfort of not having been hurt. This is the paradox. The very absences you once cursed became the presence you now bless. The cracks became the windows. The wounds became the openings. It's here, in this understanding, that you find peace. Not the fragile peace that comes from things finally going your way, but the deep, unshakable peace that comes from knowing you can survive what doesn't. You no longer wait for closure from others. You create it within yourself. You no longer wait for someone to validate your worth. You live it. You no longer wait for the right moment to begin again. You see that every moment is the right moment. The maps they left you weren't drawn on paper. They were etched into the way you see the world, the way you listen, the way you carry yourself through uncertainty. They were the invisible lines that connected you to your own depth. And maybe that's what they were meant to be all along. Not destinations, but directions. Not forever companions, but wayfinders who appeared exactly when you needed them. You will meet more of them. Some will stay. Some will go. But now you know. None of them will be wasted. Everyone will add to the map. Everyone will pull you deeper into the truth of yourself. As you stand here now, you can thank them without longing. You can bless them without wishing they'd return. Because you understand, it was never about keeping them. It was about keeping the part of yourself they awakened. And that you will never lose. So walk forward, not as someone searching for the next missing piece, but as someone already whole, curious about where the next path may lead. Because life will keep handing you maps, and now you know how to read them. If this spoke to something deep in you, then you've already begun the journey Jung spoke of, the journey inward. And that's the path we walk here, together. I'm not here to give you answers. I'm here to help you see the ones that have always been waiting inside you. If you're ready to keep unfolding, keep stepping deeper into the silence, you know where to find me. This is Silence Depth, and we're just getting started.